the strap. Good morning and welcome to our session on securing IoT for the post-quantum era. Is that our session? Yes, the domain name registry perspective. My name is Wouter Natris van der Borgt and I'm the coordinator of a dynamic coalition here at the IGF called Internet Standard Security and Safety. And with me are people from the coalition and from AFNIC. And together we'll be presenting the report that we are putting out here at the IGF. But first, a very short word about what IS3C, the Dynamic Coalition, is. We have one overarching goal, and that goal is to have long-existing security-related internet standards deployed by industry. And we have been producing reports over the past 5 years since we exist. And the first one was on education and skills, and trying to close the skills gap between what tertiary cybersecurity curricula offer and what the industry actually demands. And we identified an age gap and a skills gap and a gender gap all in one, all over the world. The second report was on IoT security, and that will come back a little in Joao's presentation, so I'll not go into that further. Our third report was on government procurement. We found out that governments mostly do not procure their ICTs secure by design, so it's not in their procurement perspective. So that is something that really needs to change if you want to have an incentive for industry to actually start producing secure by design products, whether services or devices or applications, etc. Then we produced two tools. We identified with a global forum of experts what are the most important internet standards to deploy on interconnectivity, and we added websites because everybody thought that was extremely important to put a point of pressure on for industry as well. Then we produced a toolkit on arguments. What arguments do technicians need to use to convince their CEOs, their CFOs, their board directors, etc., to actually either deploy standards or procure standards secure by design. And this year we have our fourth report, which the people here on the table will tell you about post-quantum encryption. The way that I look at it, the history of cybersecurity is, imagine that you buy a car on the top of a mountain and the salesman gives the keys to you and says, just drive down, there you go. And you go around the first very soft bend because it's starting to slow down very slowly, and there's a guy saying, do you want to buy brake lights? Waving on the side of the road, and by the next bend somebody is waving, would you like to have whatever, seat belts? And then finally, do you need brakes? Do you need brakes? And there's the first hairpin tail and the ravine going down like this. And this is what sort of happens with ICT. You buy a device and then somebody says you have to install this, or you have to buy antivirus, or you have to whatever. And that is something which is not normal for any other product in the world. Everything comes with sort of design for security. So I think that is what we are trying to prevent with this report. If Quantum Day comes and we don't have security in place, then there may be havoc. And if that happens, like the Millennium Bug or not, that the future will tell. But we think that it does. And with me are the people who are going to explain why this is important. We have from AFNIC Benoit, we have Sandosh, we have Joao from I3C and online ALIF. And then we have a photo moment with the report, and then we close the session with potential actions. So first, let me give the word to you, Benoit, to explain why this topic was important for AFNIC to take on and do the work with us.
Thank you, Wout. I'm Benoit Ampo, Director of Partnerships and Innovation at AFNIC, and we are very happy supporting this fourth report, and I will explain why and give you some elements of context on why AFNIC, the French Internet Registry, is very pleased with the outcomes from this report. At AFNIC, we have been working for over 15 years on the Internet of Things, particularly on the technical aspects and the identification of objects, as well on security and privacy issues through several R&D projects. More recently, like many technical organizations, we need anticipating the technical transition. We have begun to evaluate the impact of post-quantum cryptography on more operational aspects. As early as 2016, we organized a conference with our scientific council to raise awareness about its impact on our increasingly digitalized societies. Since then, many things have evolved. As part of our commitment to R&D, we also have observed that there are still too few studies on the social and societal impact of technologies. This is also a shift for us. We are trying to integrate, when relevant, these important dimensions into some of our studies, which makes sense, particularly here at the IGF, the unique place where all stakeholders can dialogue. This report was born from all these contextual elements. Quantum computing is no longer a distant dream, confined to the page of science fiction. In a way, it's still distant, since we do not know when the threat will be available and ready to crack the global cryptographic scene on our digital services. It is a rapidly evolving field with some significant investment from both the public and private sectors. While quantum computing promises revolutionary advancements, it also poses a substantial threat to our current cryptographic systems. The algorithms that secure our digital communications today could be rendered obsolete by the computational power of quantum computers. It's particularly acute for IoT devices, which are increasingly integrated into our daily lives and critical infrastructure. Ensuring the security and privacy for the long term is crucial. This report that will be presented by the Internet Standard Security and Safety Coalitions has been also submitted to the community for comments. So I'm very grateful to the authors and contributors of these reports. I think it's offering a comprehensive analysis of existing vulnerabilities, an assessment of political and regulatory frameworks, and last but not least, strategic recommendations to enhance security at national, local, and also global levels. In conclusion, even though the quantum computer capable of breaking current cryptography does not yet exist, the complexity of the transition necessitates immediate awareness and also action plans. Adapting infrastructure, revising trust chains, updating software, testing interoperability, this is not just about activating an option or replacing a few lines of codes or having some brake lights for your car, for instance. These are slow, sometimes costly evolutions that require coordination among many actors and rigorous planning. Past experiences in technological transition or the deployment of internet security extensions shows how these changes, even consensus-driven, can extend even more than a decade. We must collectively anticipate an inevitable transition. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you set the stage, Benoit, ideally for the next step. But why is it important for a registry that .afnik is for the .fr region? So please, Santosh.
Thank you, Wout. My name is Santosh Balakrishnan, Head of R&D Partnerships at AFNIC. So thank you, Benoit, for setting up the stage for my talk. In the next 5 minutes, I will try to explain why a domain name registry is involved in the study about IoT and post-quantum. So here, if you see in the image here, we have different stakeholders involved in connecting a domain name to the web service or sending a mail to different users. So if you see from a technical perspective, we have IGF, which standardizes the IP addresses and the domain names. From a governance perspective, we have, for example, in the domain name sector, we have ICANN, we have CCTLDs like .fr. In the IP address governance, we have IANA, regional internet registries. For example, in Europe, it is called RIPE, Réseau IP European. So all these different stakeholders are involved in setting up the stage for translating the domain name to IP address. And the system that is used behind it is called the domain name system. But when we see in IoT, we have different stakeholders involved also, but they are working in silos. So what AFNIC is trying to look at it is that the multi-stakeholder system that has been working quite effectively in the internet for the last 40 years, can it be applied in the IoT? So that's what we are working on. And we are not just telling it, we are walking the talk. We had, for example, worked with different stakeholders on French government and the European projects. For example, we started with the supply chain industry in the consumer goods to look at how RFID or barcode could be used in the DNS and then resolved to its service. Then we work with the LoRa Alliance, which is the LP-WAN technology. So we started like in Legos. We started first with seeing whether the identifiers can be added to the DNS database. Then these identifiers like RFID and barcodes could be resolved to service using the DNS. Then we added the next layers like security and privacy. So we had considerable experience in the last 15 years working with IoT stakeholders on how to use DNS. So the IS3C report here, that's the objective of this talk, looks at today's pain points in the IoT and how it is amplified by the advent of post-quantum. This report looks at it in detail, which will be explained by Yoav and Elif. So from a policy and standards landscape, what happens in the US, for example, NIST has published different algorithms, like 4 or 5 algorithms for post-quantum cryptography. The federal government is saying that by 2035, all federal systems classified and unclassified must be using full quantum-resistant cryptography. For example, in the EU, we have different standardization activities going around PQC. The EU roadmap also says that by 2035, transition should be largely complete for all practical systems. From a domain name perspective, if you see at the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, there is also ongoing work on how the DNS system could be getting ready for a quantum secure future. So our role as a registry, what are we going to do? We want to look at the technical and policy perspective on how to transition PQC-ready DNS infrastructure for real-world use. Let's say, for example, with PQC, we have cryptographic key sizes, which can be large, and there is also energy consumption. Then finally, our objective as a registry is to keep the DNS trustworthy for IoT. Our call for action is that as multi-stakeholders, let's work together to ensure that when the deadline arrives, like in the 2035, the IoT can resolve using DNS. The algorithms used for securing access could be quantum resistant. Thank you.
Thank you, Santosh. I think that shows that it is an urgent topic. And we focused on IoT, which is the clicker. That we focus on IoT because we have to limit our research, of course, but this could be on many different topics. The DNS will have its own problems, the banking systems will have their own problems, the routing system on the internet will have their problems. But we faced the IoT challenge, And Joao is going to go into that. And then Elif will come up with the post-quantum part of the report. But Joao, the first is yours. Why is it so important on IoT to have this fixed, and what are the challenges we're facing already today? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. So, in this part of the report, we did a literature review to understand the emblematic IoT security incidents, because we wanted to understand how we can, what's happening to be tackled. Then we started to look after the emblematic incidents to see the reach of these attacks and how they affected the public. And well, later we started to investigate and evaluate the policy frameworks and global standards that are active today. And with this, we discussed and thought about how to assess the readiness for post-quantum cryptography, because here it's not a question whether we are prepared or not, but how can we prepare? So to this, we create, in the end of the report, a proposal to actionable and inclusive mitigation, including mitigation strategies, since we know the internet is made out of billions of devices, and a huge part of them will not be able to be patched. So to start looking over the threat landscape, we need to look into the IoT devices and see what are they. So they are resource-constrained devices, which is our first challenge, since post-quantum cryptography is way more complex and way more a resource-intensive technology to be used. And we also are here using devices with fragmented protocols. So we have the devices with LoRa that uses a bandwidth different and well, a protocol different than the IP protocol that we are all used to. So how can we go after it? How can we protect these other devices that talk in different languages? So it makes us feel like in the 70s when we had a couple of devices talking different languages, but we need to harmonize them to protect all the ecosystem, not just a part of the ecosystem, against the quantum threats. So, and of course, the other part of the landscape that we have is the low user awareness. So we have a inertia in patching these systems, because most of people even don't, it's difficult actually to look after all your devices that you have in your home or in your factory or in your company, because they are intended to be automated. They're intended to be devices that you are going to drop in the system, and you will never think again of this individual device. So how can we highlight that we have these entry points, that we have these devices, they are a risk, and use this to protect? So the case studies, I brought 3 here. One is the Jeep Cherokee hack. Well, it happened in 2015. They were able to change the steering wheel of the device and also interfere with the braking system. So this was a huge turning point, because online hack would be able to cause immediate harm to the user. So you can think like, okay, it was in 2015, so now we are better. Well, no, in 2024, Kia had also an incident that you could change the device owner, and with this be able to unlock the car and also see the history of the car. So anyone with a Kia car could be hacked in this way and have its privacy violated. So the St. Jude cardiac implants show that it's not only restricted to a specific industry. You can talk about medical devices too that can risk the life of the patients. So these cardiac implants had a flaw that could be, so the device could be discharged remotely and then making it unusable to the patient. And one thing that we saw very concerning is about the botnets. So I will go further on this. The Mirai botnet is the one most prominent because it was created in 2016 and it was actually a proof of concept. So a couple of guys in the college said, I think this kind of attack is feasible, so we will write some code and publish on the internet showing how we are vulnerable. Well, this actually created a trend based in their code. There are more than 30 active variants of this malware running around, and they have a huge impact in the privacy of the users and also to cause harm. So we saw other examples being used by espionage, and we need to look after this kind of threat that it's global. So the policy landscape we went through, it's pretty interesting. So we have ISO, and they are based in very foundational. They're based on foundational knowledge about how we can secure these devices. We have the EU Cyber Resilience Act, which mandates the security by design, including in IoT. We have the NIST. The APEC labeling systems are pretty interesting because they try to bring awareness to the user by validating and certificating the devices. And also, we looked up into the PQC part. We saw that UK created a roadmap to plan the transition up to 2035, which it looks promising, but we need to work on that too. And also, we saw the role of IGF in the PQC standardization because the main source of communication of these devices is the internet, and we need to have devices to tackle this, to people to tackle these communications. So, the strategic recommendations, we saw that we are coming in a good path, but we need to be further on it and create a mandate security by design universally, harmonize globally labeled certification, and invest in lightweight, post-quantum resistant solutions. And of course, train the users and the programmers to be able to use these kinds of technologies. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joao. And I think the sort of risks are quite clear at this moment, also the recommendations. Sorry. And Elif, what are your findings in the research where the post-quantum part and the cryptography is concerned? So the floor is yours, Elif, and you have 9 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Wout. Just making sure that my slides are up as well. And of course, we are very happy to be presenting today the findings of our report. And you also see the full name, that it's socio-political and technical impacts of IoT and PQC. And in this report, already my colleagues mentioned that we will be focusing on also giving strategic guidelines. So for me, I think to complement what has been already said, let me just maybe jump to the PQC part with a bit more detail. So what we wanted to cover here with our co-authors was both giving the advice on the importance of the PQC migration, but as Wout briefly mentioned, we also wanted to make sure that it's on a concrete subject. And for this case, we will be referring to IoT also when it comes to our recommendations. So first, we wanted to understand what is the current status of the discussion on these issues. And when it comes to PQC, it's important to mention also for our audience that yes, we are talking about a threat by a quantum computer, and this particular quantum computer that we refer to is defined as a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So it has a focus, it has the capacity, and it can be utilized for breaking the currently valid encryption, including RSA. And I don't have to explain why this is a significant threat, but I'm just going to picture for you one version of this threat that has been discussed a lot. This is called harvest now, decrypt later. And this is to say, even if when we are thinking that our highly sensitive data, such as government communications, are currently encrypted, this discussion, this particular risk is highlighting that this encrypted data can be recorded right now, and those recordings can be decrypted once malicious actors are able to utilize a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So that is just to give a concrete example on why we say this risk is a big one. And the other, of course, indicators to understand how this is a current and relevant risk is to look at the policy landscape. We are already seeing and analyzing in our report the actions by NIST. It was also briefly mentioned by my colleagues that they already have guidelines that is on which PQC algorithms are recommended, but also the fact that they set 2035 as a target for all federal systems to migrate to PQC encryption. So again, this can sound like a bit like away, right? Because we are talking about 2035, but it has been communicated also by NIST quite strongly that it is really, really important to start a migration process as early as possible so that we can really guarantee that we are going to be making sure that this data is really secure. So they gave the target as 2035, but then again, they said we have to start today all of the migration plans. Why am I highlighting this? Because maybe some of you saw in the news, maybe not, but EU just announced a few days ago that their ambitious target for all high-risk use cases that the PQC migration should be completed by 2030. So now we are already looking at a 5-year deadline, but let me make it a bit more pressuring by also explaining how they actually said that for achieving this timeline of making the switch by 2030, EU is now requiring the PQC transition planning and pilots to be initiated at least by the latest by the end of 2026. So if you walked into our lounge thinking that we will be talking about a sci-fi issue about the future, I guess that was wrong, right? We are launching today this report that is directly relevant to what needs to be done now and not later. So let me just stress that there are also other EU member states, including France, Germany, and the Netherlands, that already launched their PQC migration guidelines. So in our report, you will be also finding more explanations on this as well. And this was, again, mentioned by my colleagues very briefly. Our report also looks at the societal impact angle as well. So, for example, if we are talking about this like harvest now, decrypt later attacks, then we have to preserve the long-term privacy of the citizens as well against these kind of attacks. And we also have to secure critical services when it comes to societal impact. Also, when we are thinking about the legal impact, now that, for example, we are saying the PQZ migration plans must start latest by 2026, the regulations like the GDPR should be also compelling the use of quantum resistant encryption in the near future. And when we look at the economic impact, of course, there will be significant costs for upgrading systems and hardware. That is also why we are urging for the migration plans to be started early. It has been mentioned again that we will be also covering in our report the environmental impact as well. I think Joao made a soft reference to it about how the algorithms can be also quite energy intensive, and for making sure that we are thinking about the environment, we will need to be working towards a lighter, possibly working very well algorithms as well. So now I will be just jumping into the recommendations. Again, it was already highlighted that this will be on different levels. So we will be giving recommendations in this report that are both on the national and organizational levels in detail, but we also made a call for global cooperation as well. And we have different levels of recommendations. Again, you will find all of this in our lengthy report that we are looking at, for example, some more timeline perspectives in more detail on how to handle PQC migration. And then we are also explaining in detail how organizations should tackle this. But another added value of our report is we got a chance to apply it to a particular case, particular study, which is on this IoT security. And for this, we also gave international level guidelines that is about global standardization, interoperability, that is focusing on international R&D as well as capacity building. And we are also very happy that we managed to give this very concrete national level recommendations as well, starting from government initiatives for awareness and R&D, continuing with making mandatory the PQC compliance, because again, now I think it's very clear that the risk, the threat is there. We know now better than, let's say, 20 years ago not to ignore cybersecurity requirements, right? So in that sense, we are also highlighting that there has to be already educational training programs as well, but also we need to be thinking from things like national synergies, things like supporting, for example, product developers in PQC, so that we are really covering a 360 aspect of this migration issue. Again, we said that we gave concrete guidelines also when it comes to IoT and PQC intersection. Here you can see in our report that we will be explaining how step by step a company and organization can also work towards or move towards the PQC migration, starting from a cryptographic asset inventory for their IoT systems to, of course, getting to, for example, the data privacy policies in line with that, as well as the supply chain engagement. So again, I already said that we are very happy to be launching this report. So I think that Wout also has a few printed out copies with him as well, but you can scan this QR code as well to download our report. And if you are interested in working with us, of course, our colleagues are on stage. If you want to learn more on our report, like I said, you are happily provided this free and publicly accessible link to download and benefit and cite this report in your future work as well. Thank you very much, Wout.
Thank you very much, Elif, and very much on time. I think that what Elif shows is that we have an option, and that option is to start acting now and be secure in the date of quantum. But the other thing is that we have a Dutch saying a donkey does not run into the same stone every time. So where cybersecurity is concerned, I think the world has proven not to be a donkey, because we've made the same mistake over and over and over with launching new products insecure by design. And this is the chance to do it differently. I think that with that, I open the floor for questions. Are there any online questions? No? It's a question in the room, because the experts are here. So who would like to ask a question? There are microphones. So Ernst and Mikey, please move to the microphone. And please introduce yourself and your affiliation first.
Does mic work? Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Ernst Norman. I'm the cyber ambassador for the Netherlands. I'm not a specialist on quantum computing, and really thank you for the presentation. I will read the report with interest. First of all, I was really happy that in the one of the presentation there was a reference to the Cyber Resilience Act, because Wout said that it was especially important during procurement from the governments, but actually that's already too late. I mean, it should already be in the products anyway because of the Cyber Resilience Act. And I hope that many other countries outside the European Union will look at the legislation and also try to copy it, what's relevant for their own legislation, to ensure that it becomes a world standard to include cyber resilience in the products of the companies. For me, the risk in quantum and IoTs was a new angle. Really interested to learn about it. I discuss also quite often with specialists, professors from universities, the risk of post-quantum computing. And I must say there's also some different discussions. They say, the organizations for which it's really relevant, the harvest, decrypt later, they are already aware of it and they're busy with it. So like the intelligence agencies. But if you look, for instance, to companies, small and medium-sized companies, individuals, data which is more than 5 years old is hardly relevant to steal and to put the energy in it to decrypt it. So they say, and encryption, or the whole development of new encryption is going on anyway all the time. So it's not a topic for the wider audience to be really concerned about, because, I mean, with the product development in place, it will in the end also reach them in a certain time through the products. I'm wondering what your view is on that. So, because you read a lot that it makes big as an enormous risk, and at the same time, I speak to professors say, we already have post-quantum encryption. Those organizations who really need it, they are already aware of it and they use it. Also, companies like ASML, for instance, they are truly aware of the need to secure their data. I'm curious about your view.
Okay, thank you, Ernst. And Mikey will take your question and then we answer both at the same time.
Thank you. A very exciting and interesting session.
Please introduce yourself first.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Introduce yourself.
I'm Maikki Sipinen, and thank you for this nice, interesting session. It's certainly an exciting topic, but also quite complex. And I can imagine that for citizens, it's not super easy to really grasp all the challenges here. And probably most of normal people living their everyday lives don't really think about it much, or even know that they are using RSA or other encryption systems. So I'm wondering, one of your recommendations was about this global labeling and certification. It was exactly to increase citizen trust. So it would be interesting to hear a tiny bit more what that could look like, and what would it be like in practice, since it sounds like something a bit challenging, because if you want to promote this kind of labels, you also are, I believe, promoting these challenges, like with this store now, decrypt later, which probably many citizens are not aware of yet. So how do you balance raising awareness and not just worrying people, or how to create trust without making it all way too complex? Thanks.
Thank you, Mikey. Thank you, Ernst, for your questions. Who would like to answer Ernst's question first, and then we go to Mikey's question? You take Ernst?
Yeah. Okay. So for the first one is like, is it a problem if with most of the devices? So yeah, I argue in this favor, because when we think of the cities that we are, the intelligent cities, it has embedded several IoT devices all over the around, and if these devices are not secure enough for the kind of challenges that we will face, we make our society as a whole vulnerable to these kinds of attacks. So if you've been able to fake the ownership of a specific device that it's crucial to the working of a transportation system, for example, it's been made by very tiny pieces, and if you break this chain, you can cause real harm. And about the labeling part, well, we already have labeling in cars. You can see like, oh, this car is rated safety A, this car is rated safety D. I believe people buy them knowing this. And for their restrictions, they are willing or not to take this risk, but it's good to take this decision informed. So I don't think it will cause some kind of make them afraid unnecessarily.
There's an example that I heard is about voting machines. Where's that data stored, and what happens with being able to see what somebody voted 20 years ago or 25 years ago when there's been a regime change? So, in other words, there are all sort of vulnerabilities that we need to consider that we're not even thinking of. It's not about ASML because they have money enough, but it's about the things that lie there for 20 years or 40 years and what happens with them. So it's far more complex, I think, than just the big companies or a big bank that will probably be able to deal with it. So that's the sort of thing we have in the back of our mind. We have time for one more answer. So who would like to? Yes, Sandoz, Sandoz?
If I could add to the question for the production and the research. So if you see, the PQC is already in the research, and it's just now the NIST or the other organizations are trying to quantify which are the algorithms production could use. So I would like to take just an analogy of what happened in the DNS. For example, people were saying that there are security vulnerabilities. So DNSSEC was a solution, but nobody was adopting that. But suddenly came the Kaminsky attack, and then there was a huge adoption. So I think in the quantum world also, things like that would help to easily add adoption.
And from just to add also from the end user perspective and raise awareness. Some countries are also thinking about developing like a cyber score label on products, so it could be also a way to directly give the information to the end users and consumers about the level of security enhanced by your product.
So thank you very much. 45 minutes are over before you know it, and they are almost over, so we're closing. I liken this topic to the millennium bug. Although everybody worked for nothing, it seemed, everybody was able to act at the same time, take the same measures that were agreed upon up front. I think that is something that we need to do with this topic, that the whole world starts acting, that nobody is left behind, that developing nations are assisted to set the steps they need to take, because if they're vulnerable, we're vulnerable. So I think that the IGF in 2026, I'm confident that will continue, would be an ideal place to bring this together. Because we have so many different stakeholders that will have to take their own actions, and they have to agree upon these actions. So what if we start later this year with an action plan, bringing important stakeholders together and start discussing what is the issue, what are the actions, what is the quantum, the cryptography that we agree upon, and start to make an action plan. And then it goes outside of the IGF, and from that moment on, hopefully everybody starts taking the same decisions. And Nico, you can have a very, very short comment, but please introduce yourself. We have 1 minute left, and then they switch us off. So please introduce yourself, but I would like to thank everybody first, and then we'll see how far we come. Thank you, guys. Thank you over there and the Norwegian organization, because you've been absolutely brilliant these days, and Lucien for reporting. Very, very brief.
Yeah, I'm Yuri Bokove from the Finnish Greens Party. I feel like the largest actor that is being under risk here is not the private companies, not the industry, not the ICT private operators, but the critical public infrastructure that is being quite harmed by austerity and the current
You've made your point, sorry, so that Nico can make his point. Sorry.
Yeah, very quickly. My name is Nico Caballero. I'm the GAG chair at ICANN. I just wanted to know how many governments you have at this point participating in the initiative, and how they can you hear me?
Zero, yeah, it's zero. That's your answer. So we want to bring them in as fast as possible.
Oh, all right.
I've heard you, Nico. Thank you.
You heard my question.
I've heard your question.
I'm sorry.
So-
Okay,
so
because I wasn't listening. Sorry.
It's zero. So we want to bring them into the project.
So
next.
they can still participate.
Yes, of course.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So we have 30 seconds. Lucien, in one sentence, what is the... The mic is there. There. Mic is there. In one sentence, what is the conclusion of this session?
Yeah, a few very good points, and I'll be brief. The first one, and I have two, is that it's quite important to keep in mind that other transitions like IPv6 or the adoption of DNSSEC took like 10 years. We need to be faster. And the second one, well, we launched this report of the IGF, which is a key multi-stakeholder fora. That's excellent and need forward thinking.
Okay, that was very brief, and thank you very much for this synopsis. I want to thank everybody again for showing up so early on the last day of and for your interest. Thank you again, everybody, and hope to see you at the next IGF.
Test. 1 2 1 2.
good morning, everyone, both here in the room and those joining us online. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this important session at the Internet Governance Forum 2025. This panel, titled AI at a Crossroads Between Sovereignty and Sustainability, is a joint initiative between LAPIN, the Laboratory of Public Policy and Internet, the Sustainable AI Lab at Bonn University, and VLK Advogados. We are truly honored to host such a timely and global conversation, and I want to begin by thanking our distinguished panelists for being here today. I'm Alexandra. I'm a co-founder of LAPIN and served for a few years in the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. Today, I represent VLK Advogados, a Brazilian law firm where I provide legal counsel on data protection, AI, cybersecurity on juridical matters and government affairs. Now I'd like to pass the floor to José Renato, who will present himself and introduce the central topic of our discussion. José Renato.
Hello, Ale. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is my audio working good? Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for who's watching us. It is a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, Alexandra, for introducing me. My name is José Renato. I am also a co-founder of the Laboratory of Public Policy and Internet, LAPIN, and now also doing a PhD at the University of Bonn. I would also like to thank Thiago Moraes and Cíntia Piccolo for helping organize the session, and I'm very happy to be here. Well, our discussion is exactly in this intersection between artificial intelligence sovereignty and also the need for us to secure that technological developments that we carry out are consistent also with a very urgent need to tackle climate change, environmental collapse as a whole. So we have been identifying how there's a growing discourse on not only AI, but digital sovereignty as a whole among different governments. European Union is an example, Brazil is another example, also countries like China, the US with different words is using the same, more or less the same idea. And basically these discourses and policies have been mostly focused on a need to guarantee national security, but also economic development. At the same time, we have also been seeing a similar movement, but within social movements. So different initiatives among indigenous peoples against or among workers' movements are also talking about digital sovereignty, AI sovereignty, and etc. And in the global south, both these nation-led discourses and also social movements discourse are very interrelated with the history of dependency, particularly on technology and infrastructure that dates back to colonial times and which persists through terms and periods in which coloniality and what many have called digital colonialism is also influencing these discourses. And well, we also know at the same time that AI is deeply connected with physical infrastructure. So it is very strongly dependent on minerals, on energy and water. So our idea is how to discuss here how to advance these calls for further independency and control over these technologies and their infrastructures, while also avoiding expanding on the effects over the environment, which are leading mostly to climate change. We're also interested in understanding the differences between global south and north approaches to digital sovereignty, to AI sovereignty as a whole, and that is why we have participants from distinct backgrounds here, government officials, representatives of international organization, academia, and civil society as well, including from one social movement in Brazil, which is taking the lead to claim digital sovereignty over their activities. So I pass on now back to Alexandra to talk about the policy questions that we have thought for this panel. I'm looking very much forward to our discussion. There you go, Ale.
Thank you, José Renato. So today we aim to explore the following policy questions. How can nations reduce their technological dependency in the realm of AI while ensuring that the development of these technologies leaves low environmental impacts and supports them in achieving the SDGs? What are the main tensions between the aspirations of governments and communities, including social movements and indigenous communities, with regard to AI sovereignty, and how can they be addressed? And finally, how can the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance can be applied within the design of policies aimed at fostering sustainable AI sovereignty, so as to have the demands of social movements effectively taken into consideration? So let's start with initial speeches from our dear panelists. I would like to check if Ana Valdivia is already with us. Okay, I'll introduce her. Ana Valdivia is a departmental research lecturer in artificial intelligence, government, and policy at the Oxford Internet Institute at the University of Oxford. She investigates how datafication and algorithmic systems are transforming political, social, and ecological territories. Anna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jose, for organizing this panel about like digital sovereignty and data colonialism. And I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm so sorry that I cannot be there in Norway because I've been attending the main international conference in AI ethics, where we have been discussing these current debates, right? And something very relevant that we have found out was that LLMs, so generative AI, is becoming bigger, and that doesn't mean that it's becoming better. Because something that we found out in the conference is that LLMs that are bigger reproduce and learn more stereotypes than smaller LLMs. So that comes with other side effects like environmental impacts, and I've been analyzing the environmental impacts of AI for years now, and I've been analyzing the supply chain of artificial intelligence. And something that I realized is that while nation states have like this narrative towards digital sovereignty, and for instance in the UK the government wants to develop more data centers to be digital sovereign. There is like another part of this debate that is neglected, which is that this infrastructure cannot be sovereign because this infrastructure depends, as you have said, of like different minerals and other like natural resources that are not embedded in our so-called nation states. So that's it. Like if the UK wants to become digital sovereign, it depends on other countries like Brazil, like Kazakhstan, like China, like Taiwan to develop all this infrastructure. For instance, to develop the AI chips, which are named GPUs, graphical processing units, you need cobalt, you need tungsten, you need copper, you need aluminium, and these minerals are extracted from other geographies that are basically geographies within the global majority, and the extraction of these minerals have like direct impacts on communities living nearby, as we have seen in the past literature on geography and extractivism. But then the increasing size of AI algorithms like GPTs and other LLMs come with other side effects, as I have said, because now it's not only about mineral extraction, it's also about the processing, the training of these algorithms. And this comes also with other environmental impacts like water extraction and land, and I have seen that in Mexico, for instance. So in Mexico, we have the state of Querétaro that is inviting a lot of data centers and a lot of big tech companies to deploy their infrastructure there. While I can see like the positive side of this, which is like the infrastructure of AI is going to be democratized because it's going to be present in different states. That comes with other side effects, like the government is inviting this infrastructure without asking democratically to the communities whether they want this infrastructure there. because this infrastructure, like we know that data centers are buildings that are connected to the electricity 24 hours, 7 days a day, 365 days a year. So that means that they are using water, they are using electricity all the days. And in Querétaro is becoming the only state in Mexico which 100% of its territory is at risk of drought. So that means that communities don't have access to water. And this is something that I've witnessed with my own eyes. Like when I visit these communities in Querétaro, I've seen how they don't have access to water. So they only have access to water 1 hour per week, while on the other side, these infrastructures have access to water 24 hours a day. So AI is not only nowadays reproducing stereotypes and biases, it's also reproducing climate injustice, because if we don't regulate how this infrastructure is becoming is being implemented in different geographies, it's going to exacerbate the consequences of climate justice. So something that we have proposed in this conference on AI ethics is that rather than talk about digital sovereignty, that creates sort of like frictions between states, because all the states in the world want to become digital sovereign, we should talk about digital solidarity, and we should talk about how we can create like networks of solidarity that we help like one state with other states, and we help all together to develop like digital sovereignty, that and how we can become as a community independent from big tech companies that nowadays are accumulating all the innovation. Because, for instance, as an expert in AI, when I did my PhD, I could develop my own AI algorithms with my own laptop. And nowadays, I could see that the innovation on AI relies on big tech companies. So we are not able to develop AI technology anymore. We have to depend on big tech companies. And it has also become clear in this conference on ethics, how like the LLMs that we know, like GPT and Llama, are developed by big tech companies. They are not developed by universities. They are not developed by other institutions, technical institutions anymore. So it's not only about infrastructure, it's also about how we can become digital sovereign and how we can develop this AI with our own hands and with our own infrastructure. So I think that's my intervention, and thank you. I'm looking forward to hear what the others have to say and the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Now I'll pass the floor to Alex Motal. He joined the European AI office in the European Commission the day it went live as a policy officer, seconded national experts sent from the Norwegian Ministry of Digitalization and Governance to DG CNECT, A2 Artificial Intelligence Regulation and Compliance. He coordinates work on AI regulatory sandboxes and is currently also a visiting policy fellow at the University of Cambridge.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here today, and really great to listen to the intervention of Jose and Anna as well. So my name is Alex Molzo, as was said, and I also I think it's being here today is really wonderful as someone who is seconded from Norway to the Commission, to see kind of everyone come together, and I think it's a really bright community. But this topic that we are discussing here is really close to my heart. So my background is in social data science, which combines kind of social concerns with data science methods. Programming oriented, but at the same time with inspiration from a lot of social science fields. But I also have a master's in artificial intelligence for public services. And where Jose is placed, they run a conference about AI and sustainability, and I spoke at the first edition, although I have not spoken at the ones prior. I previously held a TEDx talk on AI and the climate crisis in 2020, so I think for me, I just saw that, I think we were seeing all this compute increasing, infrastructure being built, And with the consumption patterns, you know, in all other fields, it was kind of strange to think that this is not going to be a problem. So I honestly, I think what we are dealing with here, you know, is something that is strange that we haven't seen much more clear, you know, because I think we want to deliver great services to our people, and we want to also have amazing companies and compete in a friendly way as much as possible. But at the same time, we have a shared problem, you know, and these are expressed through the Sustainable Development Goals. And I worked with AI policy full time for the last 5 years prior to joining the AI office, where I have worked now for 1 year. And before that, I worked with a non-profit organization also called Young Sustainable Impact. So I was that had a community of around 11,000 people around the world, and we worked to try to think like how can we bring forward like new solutions and new companies to address the Sustainable Development Goals. But I think maybe we were a bit naive, you know. But I think we have to be naive, and I think we have to believe in that brighter future. And like for sure, that is not to just senselessly use technology without any thoughts about responsibility and without the context that we live in. Because we live in a time where we have a climate crisis. We live in a time where we have, you know, a plurality of different crises that we are facing, and we can only face them in digital solidarity. So I really kind of think that what Anna says, you know, and what she said about kind of the minerals is something that also is very clear. And I'm also glad to say, you know, that where I'm working now in DG Connect in the European AI office, at the very ground floor of the building, we have a really large artwork, you know, and it's called the Anatomy of an AI System. Which shows kind of the value chains of the Alexa Echo, and kind of like how that is linked together. And it's an artwork created by Kate Crawford and Vlad Joler. So in a way, like every single time we walk into the building, we are looking at that artwork, you know, by Kate Crawford and Vlad Joler. So I think like what I like about the European Commission, and like what I like about the people that work there, is that they really care deeply about this thing. So I can tell you that for sure, you know, it's not something that we want to ignore. It's something that we really want to commit towards. But I mean, today I'm not talking on behalf of the European Commission. I'm not representing their official perspectives. I'm just here as an individual. But I will still tell you about a few of the things that we are working on. And one of them is also a collaboration with that we have rolled out to finance also collaboration on generative AI, to kind of get new perspectives, solutions, companies in collaboration with Africa. And there's 5 million euros there committed to this. So I will encourage anyone working here in Europe or in Africa to kind of apply together for that. And the deadline is the 2nd of October this year. So please consider seeing if there's any kind of good project for collaboration on that. And if you have read the EU AI Act, you know, you might have seen like a small part of it is also that there's a commitment to a standardization request on energy reduction. And there is also a study on green AI running now internally in the Commission. So I think this is also kind of like, although I would like to have seen that we did a lot more. It is not like we are doing nothing, you know, I'm happy to say. But I think like what we have to do is to think about the rollout of all these large-scale policy mechanisms that we are rolling out now. And it is a lot, you know. Invest AI was announced during the AI Action Summit, 200 billion euros. Investment is not a joke, you know. There's quite a significant investment there. We're rolling out AI factories, gigafactories. We have the AI Cloud and Development Act now to try to think about this in more way. There are kind of like a lot of movements to really scale up this digital in Europe. But sovereignty, doesn't that mean that we should decide for a better future, you know? If sovereignty means that we can make those decisions, if sovereignty means that we can kind of decide to do something that would be kind of better for our citizens, better for the population, then I would think that means that also that rollout has to be as responsible as possible, as sustainable as possible, as green as possible. And of course, that is my personal opinion. And I really look forward to listening to the other panelists and discussing today.
Thank you, Alex. A very interesting thing you said about we shouldn't use tech without the context we live in. Jose Renato wants to say something.
No, yeah, sure. Thanks, Ale. I would just like now to, well, first of all, thank the first two speakers. I think that we already have lots of interesting topics for the Q&A. But I would like now to introduce Pedro Ivo Ferraz da Silva. He's a career diplomat and the coordinator for scientific and technological affairs at the Climate Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Brazil. He's also a member of the Technology Executive Committee of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, and Brazil's focal point to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. And Pedro, the floor is yours, but I would also like to say that I don't think that there's no one now more attentive and also with the knowledge of what's going on in the discussions at the UNFCCC and this intersection with technology than Pedro, and particularly considering how the fact that Brazil will host the next COP now in November in Belém. So, Pedro Ivo, the floor is yours. It's great to see you here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jose Renato, Alexandra, and also other colleagues in the panel. It's a pleasure to actually reconnect with the IGF. After 10 years, I had the honor to organize IGF 2015 in João Pessoa in Brazil. And by that time, AI was actually emerging as a topic, and climate change and sustainable development goals in more general terms were rather just a subtopic, in the context of the discussion. So I'm glad that, after 10 years, things have evolved, and we are here delving into very interesting topics. I greet you all from Bonn. We've just concluded the June climate negotiations, and AI was a very important topic of discussion here. Tackling, of course, the benefits that AI can bring to climate action, and also, of course, the footprint, various environmental footprints, as also Ana Valdivia indicated, that was also part here of the discussions. So, as you know, the world is facing, among many others, the challenge of accelerating digital transformation while staying within planetary boundaries. And as I said, AI is both a powerful tool and a source of new tensions. It can be used in many ways to, for example, model climate risks, forecast disasters. It can be used to optimize infrastructure for low carbon development, but it can also deepen inequality. It can, centralize control, and again, exacerbate many environmental harms if it is left unchecked. So the question, it's not whether AI will be used or not. It is already being used. The real question is, who decides how it is used, for what purpose, and at what cost. In this context, I think governments have a critical role, not only as regulators, but also as stewards of public interest, and also as a driver of innovation and development. Governments must ensure that AI governance frameworks are rooted in democratic values. That is very important, that AI is aligned with climate goals and also protect human rights. At the same time, I think that these frameworks, they must encourage innovation. And if we look at the climate, innovation within the climate context, I think there is a dire need that AI is not only a driver for innovation, for mitigation purposes, but also for adaptation and resilience in vulnerable communities. So I think this discussion that we are having here, and I thank again Lapin and partners for organizing this panel here at the IGF. I think it's timely, as we look ahead for COP30 in Belém, in the heart of the Amazon. The Brazilian presidency of COP30 has proposed a vision, for the COP that is centered around the idea of mutirão. Is a word a bit difficult to pronounce, but it means it is a collective and community-driven effort to tackle shared challenges. And it is a concept that reminds us permanently that climate action is not just about technology, but also about cooperation, participation, and shared responsibilities. So, in this kind of ethos must also guide us how we approach the governance of AI. The current global landscape of AI, I think, reflects a profound symmetry. While, and we have mentioned it here, AI has an enormous potential to support climate action. Its development and deployment are dominated by a few countries and a few corporations, as I think it was also mentioned by the previous panelists. So most of the world remains excluded from shaping these systems. And at the same time, the environmental footprint of AI is increasing. And here, a very important aspect, while transparency of AI is declining. I mean, a recent study, from 2 weeks ago, found that 84% of widely used large language models provide no disclosure at all of their energy use or emissions. Without better reporting, we cannot assess the actual trade-offs design. We cannot design informed policies, and we can also hold AI and related infrastructures accountable. That's why inclusive international cooperation is essential, and it must be accompanied by local empowerment. I refer again to another report that was prepared by UNCTAD. It's Technology Innovation Report from this year, titled "Inclusive AI for Development." It lays out, among many other things, that developing countries need to strengthen specifically 3 strategic capabilities in order to be able also to shape AI: skills, data, and infrastructure. So as they term this as leverage points that will allow countries of the Global South not only to access AI, but to really, shape it in ways that must reflect local priorities, protect, of course, biodiversity, protect natural resources, and advance climate justice. And, this is not just about developing new technologies, it's also about ensuring that AI systems are embedded in institutions, practices, and values that are transparent, inclusive, and also, of course, climate aligned. And, as we look into the future, I think we should not reject, or let's say we should reject actually the false binary that exists between, national sovereignty and global cooperation. I think we need both. them to be rooted in equity, climate responsibility. And I think the Mutirão spirit kind of, conveys this and allow us to come forward. So these are my initial remarks. I thank you all for, again, for the invitation, discussion, and looking forward to the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Great thoughts. And I'm really looking forward to the Q&A. But for now, I'll introduce Yupin Chen, who is with us on site as well. Yupin Chen heads digital partnerships and engagement at the UNDP, the United Nations Development Agency. And before joining the UN Secretariat, Yupin was a diplomat in the Singaporean Foreign Service. So lots of diplomats here in this session. Yupin has a Bachelor of Arts, magna cum laude from Harvard University, and a Master's of Public Administration from Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. Welcome, Yupin, and now you have the floor, please.
So much to the organizers for having me here today. So I represent the United Nations Development Program. As Jose has mentioned, we are the development wing of the United Nations. We're in over 170 countries and territories around the world, supporting governments through all phases of development, all aspects, sectors, and so forth. The digital programming at UNDP is actually quite extensive. We're now in more than 130 countries, I believe, supporting them on leveraging digital and AI to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's really very interesting to be part of this conversation and really hearing your thoughts about what is so critical in terms of this intersection between digital and the environment. I'm also very privileged to follow Pedro because I couldn't agree more with some of the areas that he's highlighted in terms of the challenges here. And we as UNDP have been actually very privileged to work very closely with the Brazilian COP presidency in the lead up to COP and thinking about how these issues intertwine. So when he talks about these challenges around AI exclusion, AI inequality, this is also the framing that UNDP is looking at. In terms of considering how the AI revolution is going to potentially leave behind even more countries in the world and really exacerbate the divides between the global south and the global north. When, for instance, projections show that only 10% of the economic value that will be generated by AI in 2030 will accrue to the global south majority countries, with the exception of China, we really have a situation where the AI future is going to be even more unequal than what we already see today. When presently, for instance, over 95% of the top AI talent of the world is concentrated in 6 research universities, which are in the US and China, basically, you really see how we run this risk of having AI be, in some ways, the domain of, as already pointed out by other panelists, certain exclusive types of monopolies, tech companies, and develop in certain ways and not responding to the needs of local populations and the majority of the world. So this is where UNDP really has been looking at how we strengthen local ecosystems, ensure inclusivity in data models, LLMs, and the AI systems that will be generated in the future. This is also not to say that it's not even just about AI, right? Because even before we have AI, we need to have data. Before we have data, we need to have basic connectivity. Before we have connectivity, we also have to talk about things such as infrastructure and energy, all of which are challenges for the global south countries across the board. So from UNDP's perspective, it's not enough to just think of AI by itself, right? You need to think about the entire developmental spectrum across all these issues and really tie digital and AI, digital transformation itself, as part of this holistic approach that goes beyond just one ministry, but really thinks about the broader approaches to sustainability and inclusion and really digital transformation as part of the societal approach as a whole. So for instance, we've initiated a lot of work around some of the areas that other panelists have already highlighted. The gaps around skills, compute, and talent. Just last week in Italy, we launched the AI Hub for Sustainable Development with the Italian presidency. That is a product of the G7 presidency that is looking at how we can support local AI ecosystems in Africa, strengthen AI innovation, and also partner with AI startups in Africa to bring them to scale and to really build that capacity within Africa to be part of the AI revolution. We've also worked on various areas when it comes to digital and connectivity, as well as digital and environmental sustainability and climate issues. We have a Digital for Planet offer where, besides the fact that we've worked closely with the Brazilian presidency, we also lead the Coalition on Digital Environmental Sustainability with the International Telecommunications Union, UNEP, the German Environmental Ministry, the Kenyan government, and various civil society organizations such as the International Science Council, Future of Earth, and so forth, to really think about what kind of thought leadership and global advocacy we need around this intersection of digital and environmental sustainability. And this is in addition to the work there is being done, as I mentioned, in UNDP's country offices all around the world, where we've worked on national carbon registry systems, digital public infrastructure for climate in countries like Namibia, Cote d'Ivoire, Costa Rica, Nigeria, Sri Lanka. I have a very long list of many, many projects that I could list. But suffice to say, there is a lot of information online about what UNDP is doing in the area of digital, environment, climate, all around the world. But all of this is not to say that it's enough, because I think some of the other panelists have already talked about how we are aspiring to something a lot greater than just these pieces, right? It's not enough to say we are doing these projects. We also have to be very thoughtful in how we roll out these projects, roll out these big investments, exactly as just how you've spoken about. And actually, it's very interesting that Jose invited me to be part of this panel today, because this actually came from another convening that we did last year at the IGF in Riyadh, where we were developing what we call the Hamburg Declaration on Responsible AI for the SDGs. And this was actually just launched 2 weeks ago at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, where we precisely are asking development practitioners, the multi-stakeholder community, governments, investment banks, and the civil society community to come together to think about how, in the use of AI, we have to be responsible in how we deploy and use design AI for development outcomes precisely in these areas of people, planet, inclusivity, and so forth. So we've already garnered over 50 stakeholders that have signed on to the Hamburg Declaration on Responsible AI for the SDGs, which is the first multi-stakeholder document in this particular space. We would encourage and welcome more organizations to sign up and make commitments in this regard, because it's precisely that. How do you thoughtfully engage with AI, and how do you commit to using AI responsibly in achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and in environmental sustainability as well? So I'll end there, and I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Thank you, Yuping. Now I pass the floor to Alexandre Costa Barbosa. He's a member of the Homeless Workers Movement, a digital policy consultant and researcher.
Thank you, Alexandra. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Renato. Hello, dear panelists. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I am Alexandre Costa Barbosa. As Alexandre said, I'm a member of the Homeless Workers Movement. Some of you may be asking, what is a homeless workers movement, or it's a housing movement in Brazil. It was founded in 1997. If you can imagine, there's a huge gap of housing in Brazil, different statistics, but you can consider even 30 million people live in really precarious conditions of housing. So when you would think that the state has not the proper tools and instruments to really deal with this issue, people themselves started struggling and fighting for this. And I'm just saying that because the same applies to technology and digital sovereignty. Our approach to digital sovereignty, or what we call popular digital sovereignty, and by popular here, I'm referring to the Latin American version of popular, it deals with the massive aspect of sovereignty instead of the so-called folkloric aspect of popular. And for us, it's mainly what we've been doing the past 5 years is like doing things that the state actually haven't provided to us so far. So really fighting for a meaningful connectivity, digital literacy in peripheric and favelas, these lands and so on. Also fighting for decent work, decent digital labor beyond the statements in the academy, right? And then we realized that what we've been doing in practice, it's somehow what we claim by digital sovereignty. But for this specific panel, I think it's relevant to emphasize that in this first semester, Brazil is also chairing the BRICS summit in the following week. And within the BRICS structure, there is the BRICS Civil Forum, and in which Brazil also added this popular dimension, so the BRICS Civil Popular Forum. And we also co-led the digital sovereignty working group with the landless workers movement, which is another social movement really important in Brazil, struggling for the land reform. And this work was really interesting. You're probably gonna have access to this document in the following week. But there we promoted this idea of people-centered digital sovereignty, and we also outlined some guidelines for the new development bank to finance digital public infrastructures, having in consideration both people and nature, climate needs, and so on. There are also other guidelines specifically to deal with AI development, and I think it's really worth checking this document in the following week. When I mention here this meaningful access, digital literacy, decent work, and so on, is just to highlight that whenever we talk about AI sovereignty, we cannot restrict this discussion to, I think as the other panelists already mentioned it, to like computing power or to regulatory capacity or even data capacity or risk-based regulation and so on, but also considering this connectivity, electricity access, digital literacy access, and also a transition to decent, better jobs in the AI so-called era. I think that's mainly the initial contributions that I put in place. If you have any other question, feel free to reach us. If you're curious about what a social movement is doing in regards of digital sovereignty, you can also access our website. I will provide later in the chat here, and eventually the moderators can also share with the other attendees our approach to digital sovereignty. I think it's pretty much aligned with the sustainable vision of digital sovereignty. And just to add this more critical aspect of sustainability here, right? We've been watching the greenwashing agenda over sustainability in the past 15 years. So eventually it's a time to change to alternatives to development, right? Especially in Latin American, briefly speaking here, Latin American environment, we have other agendas, alternative agendas such as the Buen Vivir, the good living, Buen Viver, or even the commons-based development. I think that's pretty much aligned with this climate justice discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandre. Now I would like to know if we have any questions on floor. Please feel free to join the microphone. Okay, we have someone.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Raul Manuel, and I'm a member of parliament from the Philippines, representing the Youth Party. So I'd like to address my question to our representative from the European Commission. So, because in the Philippines, in our case, we also would like to look at the labor angle of artificial intelligence, because to develop the large language models, it also entails a lot of labor, especially for those in like call centers, where the structure is like a call center, but what the people do is actually to train the large language models. And one thing that we want to ensure also for our citizens is how to not replicate, all the exploitative practices in labor, and how that might extend to AI development. So since the continent of Europe is some steps ahead in terms of regulating AI, I'd like to ask if ever there are any provisions in your current laws or policies that also touch into protection of labor and workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the speakers when answering the question, please also state your final remarks. Thanks.
Yes. So I guess this is a question directly to me, and I'm here today in a personal capacity, so I'm not presenting the official views and perspectives of the European Commission. So first and foremost, I would like to say that. And I have a bit of a background as well as a Norwegian, and as a country who cares a lot about labor legislation and about collaboration. I also always actively talk to unions when I travel back to Oslo, because I think it's extremely important to think about the impact on laborers and the impact on the way that we work, but also the way that we are affected. And I think what you are saying is extremely interesting. Also, because what we are seeing is that all these large language models, they require a lot of supervised machine learning. So we have to kind of tag all these different algorithms, and that requires a lot of human labor. And I think, part of the backdrop here as well is that, for example, Kenya, there were a lot of movements as well to kind of unionize, right? To kind of see, is there any kind of way to increase our rights or to increase the pay that we get for doing all of this work, making sure that these models actually work in practice. So I think your question is extremely timely. And in the European Union, we still have fairly strong labor legislation, right? So I think it's saying that AI does not operate in a vacuum. We have existing laws, we have existing values. So let's make sure that those existing laws and the values that we have really are ways that we act in the field of AI, because I don't think it is right now. So I think there is such a long way to go. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And in a sense, how do we have ways to handle that within the field of AI is also something that I have seen the European Commission is working on. Currently, but I don't think I can give you kind of a definite answer on how to protect overall the laborers. But it is AI Act does include kind of concerns regarding employment as well in kind of risk categories, right? So in this way, at least in our region, it has a consequence. So, but with that, I guess that's my final comment. So, and I just pass it to other questions and speakers.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Yeah, Edmund Chung from Asia. Thank you for bringing the topic and especially linking it to sovereignty and digital sovereignty. I think many of the panelists have touched on this, and I think Pedro mentioned about the false dichotomy between national digital sovereignty and the global cooperation, especially global public interest. In my mind, one of the things that I think perhaps I'd like to hear from the panel, but also to really think about the personal digital sovereignty as well. I think earlier, sorry, I forgot the name of the person, mentioned about popular sovereignty, because it's the personal digital sovereignty, and I think Yuping mentioned about data coming before AI. The personal digital sovereignty is actually a very important part of really safeguarding AI that is people-centric, like for the end user ultimately. So it is not even a dichotomy. I think coming in order to bring it to full circle, it's both, it's not only both, it's the personal digital sovereignty, national digital sovereignty, and the global public interest, which brings it into the full loop. So, that's my contribution.
Okay, I'll take the next question, and then we'll go to the answers. Yes, you can. Okay.
I don't want to hear myself. Hello, thank you for this amazing panel. My name is Lucia, and I come from Peru. which is a country in which digital divide is also a huge concern. And so that's why I think this vision of digital sovereignty also involving things as, digital literacy and appropriation of the technology. So I would like to ask about environmental sustainability, because at least in my country, there's like a race in order to regulate AI, and we are like the first country in our region that has AI law, and we are trying to also approve a regulation on this, but there's a huge environmental view missing. And we also know that this is also happening in the digital public infrastructure in general. So I would like to ask, how do you think that, for instance, we as civil society organizations, also with grassroots organizations, can advocate about that without getting into this greenwashing approach that our colleague from Brazil was sharing with us?
Thank you. We have less than 5 minutes. Please, the speakers, feel free to answer rapidly. Thank you.
If I can just...
I think kind of I'll give you, Anna, I was just about to say that she raised her hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for this question, and I can share like my insights from like doing fieldwork in Mexico and Chile regarding like the sustainability and environmental impacts of data centers there. I think like one solution would be like to talk to other of your colleagues, because there are like a lot of like social movements in Latin America, and I can talk about Surciendo in Mexico, Derechos Digitales. There are like also like other movements in Chile, and if you want, I can put you in touch with them, because they have been like advocating for like more transparency. Like currently, for instance, in Mexico, we don't know how much water and energy data centers are using. Chile had a platform where the citizens in Chile could access the environmental reports of data centers, and due to pressures by the data center industry, the Chilean government have decided to cancel this platform. So data centers are not obliged anymore to report these environmental impacts in this platform anymore. So I think like we can create like this sort of like solidarity that I mentioned in my intervention, and I would be happy to be in touch and to put you in contact with other organizations in Latin America. And thank you for your question.
Okay, Alexandre Barbosa.
Yeah, I'd like to also react to the first question as well, and just to emphasize that when you're dealing at this moment in this contemporary conjuncture, all of this AI discussion, the AI sovereignty, AI regulation, AI and environmental sustainability, it has to do with politics, right? In the end of the day. And in Brazilian discussion in the AI regulation, it couldn't add any workers' right in the final approval legislation. And it pretty much applies for organizing social movements, especially popular movements, grassroots movements, to deal with environmental concerns. We've been seeing the indigenous struggle against deforestation in the Amazonian region, for instance, in the past years. And just for you to have a glimpse, the Brazilian Congress is completely against any efforts from the government at this moment. So just to have an idea that it's much more difficult than any specific guideline that we have in mind. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yuping.
And also, just to add to this dimension, it's not just politics, right? It's also the big tech and the profit motivation. And so to the first question, this fact that the labor, there's a need for labor regulation, but there's also a question around who owns the products of those labor in the end, because the LLMs themselves are going to be owned by big tech companies and not freely available to the populations that were putting in the data or the efforts to actually create them. So there's really all these issues that are tied into technology, which really requires, I think, and I really like this aspect about the mobilization of concerned individuals, groups and so forth that share experiences and thoughts about how to respond to this. So that question about what should we do, and I want to link it to what you had said, that maybe perhaps sometimes we are naive in what we try to achieve. I don't think this is the case. I think the more we sort of get together, share information, best practices of how things have been successfully changed or advocated for, and are very clear in our messaging in what we expect from governments, policymakers, international organizations such as myself and others, the better hopefully the outcomes can be. Because at the very least, we need to be part of that conversation. And thankfully, the IGF is one of these opportunities to have this type of conversation and then translate them into policy and then hopefully impact as well. So my last closing message, I think, would be to continue to speak up, to be involved, and to really think about how we collectively can make those changes that we want to see.
Pedro?
Yes, I know we are, I think the time is over. I think from all the questions and comments that were made here, I think one conclusion that I draw is that, we need perhaps to move away from some narratives that comes, especially from developed countries, that we live in a moment of, for example, a triple planetary crisis, a view that tries to limit the problems that we face in the world. Actually, I would rather say we live in a moment of a polycrisis that contains, of course, the environmental crisis, but also the social crisis with diminishing labor rights. Also, while people still fight for to overcome the challenges of hunger and poverty. So I think that's, and of course, the crisis related to digital rights, which actually is a crisis that has been very central to the debate in IGF 2015, where I was participating. So I think we need to, to tackle all this crisis in a coherent way. And I think encouraging social movement and grassroots movement is fundamental. I think technology can play a very important role here by leveraging those movements. So perhaps that is the final message here. Let's consider that we are facing various crises at the moment, and let's use technology in order to address them in a very coherent way. Thank you.
Thank you all for the great discussion. Can we please take a picture? Can you put the speakers on the screen, please?
Well, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me here inside the Zoom? Okay. Well, I think the picture that I wanted didn't work out, but I would like to thank you so much for having participated. Truly.
Thank you.
And by the way, here online we only had Latin Americans, so that's like speakers, so it's even more interesting. So yeah, thank you so much. It was great to have you guys. Like I would like 30 minutes more to chat, but yeah, thank you.
Obrigado, gracias.
Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, panelists, and global citizens. It's an honor to welcome you to this defining moment here in Lillestrøm and Oslo, the city of Nobel Peace Prize, where the world has long gathered to reflect on what it means to secure peace for humanity. Today, we extend that reflection into cyberspace. We are profound, and it's also a proud privilege to announce the Cyber Peace Index, a global initiative born out of the need to not only measure security in the digital world, but also to inspire cyber peace, a vision of a digital future built on trust, resilience, rights, and responsibility. This is more than an index. It's an evolving dynamic framework designed to keep pace with accelerating transformation of technology from AI to quantum, from misinformation to cyber warfare. And just as peace cannot be imposed by one actor alone, the index is built through a multi-stakeholder approach involving government and regulators, technology platform, civil society and digital right advocates, academia, the technical community, and most importantly, the people whose lives are shaped by these systems. The Cyber Peace Index does not aim to merely rank, it aims to inform, empower, and activate. It supports national strategies. It challenges platforms to build better guardrails. It equips communities to demand digital dignity. And it helps us all navigate towards a safe, inclusive, and trustworthy digital ecosystem. The index aligns with global compact like WSIS Plus 20, the GDC, the Global Digital Compact, and the UN SDGs. But more than that, it aims to set a new normative direction. That cyber peace is not optional, it is essential. So from this city and the country that celebrates peace, we begin a new journey, a journey where cyber trust becomes a global public good. Thank you for being part of this historic moment. And with this, in fact, we would like to introduce the panel of speakers who are present here. We have been joined by Mr. Suresh Yadav, the Senior Director of AI for Trade, Oceans, and Natural Resources. And he's a lead on AI digital transformation at the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mr. Edmund Chung, he's the CEO for Asia organization. Nicholas, who's the chair for the Governmental Advisory Committee for ICANN. Anna, who's Associate Professor from St. Petersburg University and CEO of ANO Collaboratoria. And Marlena, Senior Legal Manager for the European Center for Non-Profit Law. The session will be moderated by me, Vineet Kumar. I'm the founder of CyberPeace, and Dr. Subi Chaturvedi, who's the Global SVP and Chief Corporate Affairs and Public Policy Officer of the InMobi. With this, I'd like to invite Subi first to set the context, and then we'll take the session forward. Subi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Vineet. And I think a huge congratulations are in order. It's a very, very big day and a historic milestone. I'm really, really happy that we're celebrating the launch of the Cyber Peace Index. Cyber is a world that comes first to all of us who are now digital natives, and peace is something that we've all been working towards. So I think a huge round of applause is in order for months and months of hard work and the night oil that we've all been burning, making sure that multi-stakeholder inputs are sought, and we're able to create something that we want to take forward for all our future generations, and something that we all cherish, which is the internet. I'm really happy that we have a room which is truly representative of diversity, and it is truly inclusive. It's so good to see friends like Edmund on the panel today. And also, for me, IGF will always be my home. I've served as a member of the United Nations Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Those were very, very good times and moments that we've cherished. So just to set the context first, why is it that this is so important? I think it's critical to remember that the first malicious cyber attack came in 1988 and with the Morris worm, and it was designed by a university graduate, and it was intended only as an experiment to measure the size of the internet. But inadvertently, it caused significant disruption. It infected approximately 6,000 computers. Back then, it was 10% of the internet at the time, which meant systems slowed down or systems crashed. Now, today, as we have this panel at the very, very amazing host country, cyber peace is at a crossroad. We are hoping to secure our digital future in 2025. That is the theme that this panel is exploring. And when we look at 2025, cyber warfare is no longer an emerging threat. So that is why locating this in the context of the launch of the index is very, very important. It is today a global reality. I lead the global charter for India's first unicorn in Mobi, and we've created devices. We've ensured that we're enabling even the last mile for connectivity, and we are bridging digital divide, ensuring that the internet is not just something that you come and experience, but you also create that as a safe space. So when global realities are shifting in the current geopolitical scenario, both aspects of geopolitics, development, as well as human security become paramount. And global governments are facing this question. So therefore, very, very important becomes the role of the technical community, academia, think tanks like CyberPeace, which are very ably championed by our friend Vineet. With over 15 cyber attacks per second, now they're targeting critical infrastructure worldwide, and the cost of cybercrime has surpassed over $10.5 trillion. So the need for securing cyberspace as a domain, for holding institutions accountable, and for also constantly building capacity to make sure that regulators as well as policymakers are playing catch up. This has never been more urgent. It couldn't have been more timely. So therefore, as digital technologies continue to expand into every facet of life, from AI-powered public services to quantum communication, the intentional and ethical design of these systems is very, very critical, so that we can foster trust, we can foster inclusivity and stability, instead of ensuring that we are all dealing with conflict. So this year, we will spotlight the deepening intersections between technological innovation, cyber conflict, and the global quest for a secure and resilient digital common. Therefore, in this session, we aim to provide a roadmap for action by government platforms, the private sector, and civil society alike. So the numbers we've talked about, one more figure that sort of needs to be highlighted is 45% of all breaches now involve AI generated phishing and social engineering. And there is a sharp rise that's driven by deepfakes and generative content. And therefore, to make sure that the internet, I want to pay a tribute to one of the fathers of the internet. Windsurf has been a mentor, and he's someone I really look up to. The fact that we have to insist on upholding the core values of the internet, which are interoperability, upholding of human rights, ensuring that permissionless innovation can thrive, and therefore belief and trust, which is at the heart of everything that we hold dear, is very, very critical. So human error still remains one of the weakest links, and so is a little bit of ignorance, or ensuring that we're able to build the digital divide. And therefore digital literacy and cyber capacity building have to be key paramount pillars of the cyber indices that we're talking about. And new conflicts are increasingly talking about cyber attacks, which are being used as precursors or amplifiers of kinetic warfare. They're raising pressing questions about international humanitarian law in cyberspace, and therefore spotlighting national security and sovereignty is very, very critical. They're part of modern warfare. They're being used to disable critical infrastructure like power grids, hospitals, and defense networks. In a world of asymmetric threats, even non-state actors can now launch attacks which are disrupting national functionality. So in a war where you will always make sure that national sovereignty and security will take precedence, we have to ensure all of us come together and all of us work together to be able to create a multi-stakeholder environment where freedom of speech and expression are still held dear, and we're able to balance citizen rights along with national security. So maintaining cyber peace becomes even more essential, and therefore to preserve sovereignty, ensure preparedness for hybrid warfare, in dealing with questions like information warfare and influence operations, disinformation campaigns, deepfakes, and bot driven propaganda, which are eroding trust in democratic institutions. Cyber peace is, I think, clearly the answer. Beneath what we are all doing together in this very historic moment is ever more critical. So, securing information ecosystems which can prevent manipulation during elections, protests, and global negotiations are very, very important. The other pillar is critical infrastructure vulnerability. So, transportation, banking, healthcare, water systems, and nuclear facilities, all of them are digitally interconnected today. They're highly exposed. So, that is also something that the index deals with, as well as global independence and economic stability. I think enough and more needs to be said about protection of civilian and human rights. So, conflicts related to cyber attacks, they're often targeting civilians, they're disrupting access to healthcare, education, and communication. And also, one of the areas that we want to highlight today as we take the discussion further is the still there is a gap. A lot of scattered attempts have been made to create global norms. So I don't want to talk enough and more about treaties, but we need some more guidelines. We also need 40,000 feet above the ground voluntary principles. So unlike nuclear or chemical weapons, there is no universally accepted cyber arms treaty. So in the absence of clear rules, peace building mechanisms like cyber diplomacy and multilateral cooperation are going to be ever more critical. And therefore, we see this as an enabler for peace building and dialogue. So technology can also be used to monitor ceasefires, enable humanitarian aid, and facilitate cross-border dialogue, ensuring peaceful cyberspace that allows digital tools, that allows amazing minds like that of Edmund to flourish and create a very resilient ecosystem. So they serve as instruments of peace and not as instruments of terror. And just to end, I think it's important to highlight India's role in cyber peace as a growing digital power and member of forums like the G20, Quad, and UN. India has also been championing responsible cyber behavior. We are going to be the hosts in February 2026 of the AI Impact Summit. Our leader and champion, Shri Abhishek Singh, should be in the room, and he's been doing incredible work at India's AI mission. I think this is where technology for good and India's initiatives and leadership in cyber diplomacy, digital public infrastructure, capacity building, as well as a moral ecosystem that's built on frugal innovation can be lessons that we can all cherish and celebrate. And many congratulations, I think, to all of us again for being part of this very historic milestone. Over to you, Vineet, and I'd love to hear from the other colleagues and stakeholders. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Subi. Thanks for setting the context. And we have an eminent panel of speakers today. And before I move to our first speaker, Mr. Suresh Yadav, who is the Senior Director for Trade, Ocean and Natural Resources, and also lead on AI and digital transformation at Commonwealth Secretariat. And with Suresh, I've closely worked with him. In fact, I've been part of the Commonwealth AI Consortium. He has been one of the key person on leading the entire consortium, and a couple of very key activities, in fact not couple, many key activities that Commonwealth Secretariat had taken. So before I head to you, sir, I'll quickly request the team to showcase the presentation, because I want to show to everyone the metrics that we have factored in for the index. We have compared around 10 index that are currently there, that are available, like the ENISA Cyber Index, the Oxford Cybercrime Index, and the Cyber Peace Index is slightly different with the thing, first of all, is the rising digital threats. The digital world faces increasing threats, like Subi already highlighted the issue of AI-generated misinformation, deepfakes, sophisticated deepfake attacks that are targeting nations and also individuals. There are limitations of the existing indexes, like most current indices emphasize compliances, cyber power or policy adherence, overlooking real-time user safety, harm reduction, and ethical consideration like trust and safety of the end users are something that we find missing. And there is a need for a new framework, a peace-centric, inclusive, ethics-driven index, which is essential to measure digital trust, harm, and resilience dynamically, prioritizing user protection and platform accountability. So keeping that in mind, this is how the Cyber Peace Index has come into play, which is citizen-centric, which focuses on the issues that I just highlighted, is peace-first focus, and we are aiming to achieve real-time capability and AI trust layer also into this. These are the 10 pillar of, or you can call the 10 major verticals of the index, which starts with cybersecurity readiness, digital peace diplomacy, user trust and safety, misinformation and deepfake, cyber literacy and inclusion, the response mechanism to cyber crimes, and also the responsible AI governance, psychological resilience, PPP, and finally the cyber security score. I've laid out, and these are some of the sample, like we are trying to build this dashboard, and this is a sample dashboard. It's not the actual data, but this is how the index would appear. We'll have a country to country comparison with a score that will get highlighted, the radar chart, and all these features are getting incorporated. We have done a detailed study on the indexes, whether the other indices, and maybe because we have shortage of time, I'll leave it for later. We'll put it on our website for everybody to see. And also maybe at the end, we'll leave a QR code where people can also be a part, join the link. There's a Google form. They can be a part of the Global Advisory Council that we are setting up, and we are open for suggestions and feedback as the index continues to evolve and grow. So these are some of the pointers, the comparisons that we have made, which should be available on the website. The EU Cybersecurity Index versus the Cybersecurity Index. We have also seen the Global Terrorism Index, the GTI, the Freedom on the Net versus Cyber Peace Index. And the future vision of this index is to expand real-time analytics to capture emerging digital threats and user experiences worldwide, broaden global partnership with countries, international bodies, and CSOs for inclusivity, develop specialized modules for AI manipulation, quantum, cybersecurity, emerging technologies, and enhance dynamic dashboard tailored for policymakers, platform operators, and researchers. With this now, in fact, I'm just sharing the link for anyone in the community, since it's going to be a multi-stakeholder approach. So industry, academia, civil society, technical groups, and also the netizens can join the advisory board by just scanning the link. I'll also share the link in the chat for people to join. And with that, now I'd like to head to our speaker, Mr. Suresh Yadav. Sir, over to you for your remarks.
Thank you, Vineet. I hope you can hear me, Vineet, if you can confirm.
Yeah, loud and clear. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. And good evening from city of Manila, where I'm in transit. Thank you, Vineet, for this invite to me to share on some of my thought. First of all, a big congratulations to you and your entire team for this very innovative and path-breaking work, where you have tried to bring together all the relevant indices around the world and create a new index which really takes into account the peace work and the SDGs work. So it's a very, very innovative thinking and the work. So huge, huge congratulations. And also very thoughtful to host this launch event in City of Peace, where the peace resonates in each and every part of that city. So that's very thoughtful. Thank you for that. I just wanted to highlight that the world economy, which is around 108 to 110 trillion dollar at the moment, expected to be around 130 trillion dollar by 2030. And also the artificial intelligence, which had been mentioned and repeatedly, that is going to contribute around 15 trillion from 2023 to 2030. And this is a context that how rapidly the global economies are getting digitalized, and AI is going to accelerate further this whole process. But at the same time, if you look at the global cyber cost to the economy, also mentioned by Dr. Subi, which is estimated to be around $10.5 trillion in 2025. This was, I mean, it is the third largest economy in terms of size if you look at the USA and China. Then this economy was around 3.1 trillion in 2015. It was 6 trillion in 2021. And it has been growing with the rapid pace of 15% growth, the fastest growing segment in if you see in terms of global economy. Then what does that mean? It means that there are a lot of people who are making money on the name of the committing the crimes and the fraud and the scams in the internet space. Economies are losing, people are losing. It means that the country, society, and the people are not able to respond to themselves. And this is where the market has failed, and this is where you need investment from the different players. Now, to guide the investment in a particular direction, you need certain parameters. Like World Bank used to do doing business report. There are world investment reports where you know which direction to go for taking the investment. So I see this great work done by the cyber piece in terms of deciding, in terms of directing, in terms of giving a choice to the investors, both to the inbound, within the country and outside the country, that where you need to put in your money. If this economy of cyber related cost is 10.5, it means definitely there is a counter economy, if not more of the similar size, which offers a new opportunity for the investors, impact investors. So I see from a very different perspective that this will give a lot of food for thought to the various investors, various people, to see and identify the countries. And I see it as a form of cyber diagnostic investment opportunities in this direction, apart from bringing the country on a map on its cyber initiative, a bias related things existing in that countries, all those parameters which Beneath has mentioned. And also linking it up with the SDGs, I think it's a great thing, because as we know that we have been lagging as a word on the various SDGs, and there is already a talk to how what you do to accelerate. So I think this is a added tool in the SDGs for the global society, global world, to look into the whole process. So, Vineet, once again, I know that I told you I have to go for another meeting because I've just left a meeting to join you. But once again, congratulations to you and your entire team for this very innovative and path-breaking work. I'm sure that this entire work which you have done will make the society, make the world, make the countries a much safer space, will make the internet much safer space, particularly when the speed and the quantum of the cyber attacks are increasing. And as also pointed out that non-state actors are in a positions to challenge or destroy or damage largely to the state economies and the government economy. So that's where I think it will invite a lot of attention. It will invite a lot of interest in the various forum, the governments, civil society, private sector, academics, and research institutions who will take this index as a benchmark in carrying out the further activities in this space. So thank you very much and wish you all the best in this noble endeavor.
Thank
Over
you.
to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And thanks for making time from Manila to join the event. Now, moving from online to offline, and now I'd like to invite my next speaker, Nicholas, who's the chair of the Governmental Advisory Committee for ICAM. Nicholas, over to you for your views.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Nico Caballero. I'm the GAC chair at ICAN, and it's an honor, for me to stand before you at this milestone 20th IGF in Oslo. Where collaboration and innovation define our shared vision for digital governance. Today, as we launch, the cyberspace index, which was already explained, we take a critical step toward quantifying what was once abstract, the stability, security, and inclusivity of our digital ecosystems. So why this index matters for governments, for the GAC, and governments in general, right? So whether shaping national policies or negotiating global frameworks, we need actionable metrics to guide decisions. And I'm speaking as a data scientist, right? This index, the cyberspace index, provides exactly that, a compass to navigate complex cyber landscapes. It basically aligns with the IGF 2025 theme, in quotation marks, building governance together, by offering a transparent, multi-stakeholder tool to assess risks like cyber conflict, as was already mentioned, digital divides, and threats to critical infrastructure, and many other things. I don't need to get into the details. For instance, just to give some more color, the index can spotlight disparities in digital resilience, such as, for example, Africa's 38% internet connectivity gap, or the gender divide, leaving more than 189 million more men online than women globally. By measuring these gaps, governments can target investments and policies more effectively, ensuring, basically that no one is left behind in our digital future, so to say. There's another thing I would like to point out at which is the let's say the open source imperative. The choice to develop this index using open source software is both strategic and symbolic. Open source embodies the IGF's spirit of collaboration, allowing governments, civil society, and technologists to scrutinize, adapt, and improve the tool collectively. As we've seen with initiatives like OpenSSF, open source security tools, basically thrive when communities unite to address vulnerabilities and share best practices. Moreover, transparency is, in the index's methodology, again enabled by open source, builds trust. A very important concept, in my opinion. Just as Norway's Digital Emblem initiative protects humanitarian infrastructure through open standards, the cyberspace index can become a global public good, free from proprietary constraints or geopolitical silos. So, finally, a call to action for everybody, for not only governments, but civil society, academia, and so on. So I would just say that, we should commit to 3 principles. The first one, to adopt the index, to inform national cyber strategies and international cooperation. In the second place, contribute to its open source framework, ensuring it evolves with emerging threats like AI-driven disinformation, just to give an example. And number 3, to champion inclusivity, ensuring the index reflects, the needs of all nations, especially those most vulnerable to cyber instability, so to say. In closing, the cyberspace index isn't just a metric, it's a manifesto for collective action. So as GAC chair, I would urge governments to embrace this tool, not as a static report card, but as a living platform for progress. Together, we can turn data into dialogue and dialogue into lasting cyber peace, which is the main point for this conference. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nico. And you made a very, very important point that it's not a metric, but it's a manifesto for a collective action. And I'm sure this is how the index also, as it grows, as it evolves, and we'll see this into action. And with that, now I move on to my next speaker, Anna, who's Associate Professor of the St. Petersburg State University in Russia. Anna, can you see us? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Yes, we can see you now. So request you to share your views, Anna. Over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share my reflections on the launch of the Cyber Peace Index. It's really timely and ambitious initiative, especially as digital threats continue to multiply. So, first of all, let me sincerely congratulate my colleagues on an excellent and thoughtful presentations. What I personally find most important and even inspiring is that this index doesn't follow the usual like hard power logic. It brings us a new lens, digital peace as societal well-being. That is a very different, like citizen-centered vision, and that's exactly, I think, what the world needs right now. So today, humanity finds itself at a turning point, of course, because of the rapid development of AI. It's bringing a growing number of complex, interconnected threats, and societies are struggling to adapt fast enough, while states are like increasingly drawn into a competitive race to develop and deploy AI technologies. And in such an environment we all live in, reaching consensus on global rules and safeguards becomes extremely difficult task. And against this backdrop, the initiative presented today offers a much needed shift in perspective. So one that starts not from the top down, but from bottom up. So instead of focusing solely on state power or institutional frameworks, it seeks to understand the shared digital experience of ordinary people across the world. And perhaps by identifying common challenges faced by citizens in different countries, we can begin to uncover areas of genuine consensus, areas where international agreement is urgently needed. So, this is why it is particularly meaningful that this initiative is being launched under the auspices of the United Nations, still the only universal platform where such inclusive long term global frameworks for peace and governance can be developed. And in this time of fragmentation and distrust, the Cyber Peace Index may help us to imagine a new kind of global dialogue. At the same time, we have to acknowledge the challenges. How do we measure digital peace? Like, what does peace-centric mean in practice? The framework presented here with its 10 pillars is like really strong and visionary, but the key issue is measurement logic, I think, would be in the future. Like, for example, how we quantify psychological resilience, and how do we assign weights across 10 very different domains, and how can we ensure comparability across nations, especially those with limited open data or low transparency. And I believe one of the great contribution on the CPI is that it goes beyond already what we have. Like the CPI offers something broader. It's kind of umbrella index, and so it is just important to gradually move from a broad qualitative vision towards greater quantitative clarity. And I think clear identification of data sources will play a key role in strengthening the credibility of the index. National reports can provide valuable input, but they sometimes may reflect uneven levels of transparency or consistency. And in this regard, citizen level service could offer an important complement, helping to reflect public perceptions of safety in a more grounded, inclusive ways. So partnerships with survey institutions, including local organization, I think could support the development of reliable, context-sensitive indicators, and collaborative international research would also add depth and comparability, especially if approached as a joint process rather than through reliance on external data sets alone. So last but not the least, it is also important, I think, to reflect on how to ensure broad global relevance. So particularly for countries of the global south. So factors such as digital divides, uneven access to data, disparities in AI development deserve careful consideration, both in the design of the framework and the interpretation of these results. So sensitivity to these dynamics can help avoid reinforcing the very asymmetries that the initiative seeks to address. So dear colleagues, to conclude, I believe this index has revolutionary potential. It invites us to ask how to protect people together, their rights, safety, peace of mind. That, in my view, is the future we should build together. And thank you. I look forward to collaborating with you on making this vision a measurable and shared reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, and thanks for your remarks. We got around 7 minutes left, and we have few voices to be heard. So now I'll request Marlena, who's the Senior Legal Manager of ECNL, to share his views. Over to you, Marlena, please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vineet. And I'll keep it short because I know we're running out of time. Congrats on the index. I haven't had time to review it. And I work at the European Center for Nonprofit Law, a human rights organization focused on civic space and looking at how AI impacts human rights. I'm based in San Francisco, so I'll just share a few remarks on how the quote-unquote race for AI and impact of AI does often exclude the global majority and the types of things we'd like to see. So one thing I often say when we think about AI governance is that algorithmic-driven systems rarely warrant a whole new approach to governance or new rights. The new thing is the scale and speed at which it operates, and really perpetuating and amplifying existing human rights risks with disproportionate impact on already marginalized groups, such as in the global majority. One thing that we at ECNL really want to see when we talk about AI governance is real-world harm today, as opposed to the arguably overblown concerns of existential risk and AI misalignment, which we hear a lot in Silicon Valley and in some European or US policy discussions. One of the favorite things that I love to say about AI is that it's neither artificial nor intelligent. And what I mean by that is that it requires a lot of computing power. It's embedded in hardware, physical infrastructure, and the global economy. And I think that's where we see one of the biggest issues today of the global majority is that the digitalization often relies on the global north. There's a disproportionate data centers are based in Europe and in the US and in China. There's just been a New York Times article a few days ago, I don't know if folks saw it, on the global AI divide. I will say that the data centers have their own negative repercussions, including environmental, so I'm not sure if the global majority actually wants more data centers. But all that to say that data centers, hardware such as microchips, compute power, software, the financing, really where money goes to these technologies, the data, the skills, education, are primarily in Silicon Valley and the global north. So how do we actually redistribute that to the global majority? And something to consider, which I don't know if the index looks into this, is that what we call ghost labor. So folks labeling the data, moderating content, for algorithmic content moderation systems are often in the global majority, further creating that gap between resources and power and money. So the concentration of power really does lie within a handful of organizations. And when we think about large language models or foundation models, that's even more the case, where you see a handful of companies really building these technologies and holding that power. However, one thing that I've been really excited about to see in the global majority is that there are alternative approaches to LLMs that are emerging and that can potentially offer a more inclusive path forward. We've seen in our work community-led initiatives in the global majority that focus on public interest-driven AI development, NLP developers putting together data sets in local Indian languages, in Arabic, and really around the world in Quechua and Peru. And that highlights the potential for a more culturally informed algorithmic system and more decentralized technology. And these models, though smaller in scale than the ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, do demonstrate comparable performance in tasks like translation when we think about text-based models or sentiment analysis. And really it shows us the potential for more rights-based participatory AI development that does not rely on monopolistic AI and LLM providers. Something that I did want to flag is language inequities in AI development. Most models, algorithmic models, are trained on data rooted in colonial and imperialist dynamics. And that leads obviously to discriminatory outcomes, especially for communities in the global majority and marginalized groups. We've seen some quote-unquote debiasing efforts to debias the data, but these have shown limited effectiveness, and there are still significant performance gaps that persist between dominant colonial languages like French, Spanish, German, and more underrepresented languages, especially dialects or countries that do not have enough data that is used to train these systems. Something that we often forget as well is that in addition to the data, cultural nuance is often lost when building these systems. And then once they are developed, there's poor benchmarking that prevents AI developers from adequately identifying and addressing discriminatory impacts. Just a few other things to consider is that there's a lot of relationships between AI developers and governments, including support for governments with authoritarian practices and the impacts that that has to human rights communities and marginalized groups around the world. And when there is conversation around developing AI, it often comes from a techno-solutionist approach, very top-down. This is, the kind of AI will save the world, AI for development narrative. And these are often inadequate products and solutions that do not fit the local or regional context, that are not built with meaningful participation from communities, and local voices are excluded. And that's both the case in the development of these technologies and then the validation. One thing that we see, for example, when we think about foundation models in particular, is reinforced learning by human feedback. So I won't go into details about that, but those are mostly, that's mostly done in Silicon Valley and definitely excludes groups from the global majority. Before I share a few thoughts on AI global.
Sorry, actually we have run out of time, so I'll request maybe Edmund to make his quick remark. Yeah, and then we can take the conversation. No, you have a minute.
20 seconds. So, thank you, Vineet, for inviting. And we're from .Asia. We are very supportive and would like to lean in and participate in the development of the index. I think sometimes we joke about world peace, but I think that it is in this time of really existential challenges that we have to insist on peace as an option, as a preferred option. I wanted to leave with just quickly three suggestions. One is to reframe the digital security concept into digital resilience. That is, I think, very important. And earlier in the week, we talked about this as well. And in the index, I think that it will be useful because resilience and not retaliation is about peace, and that's where we need to be. We also know we shouldn't shy away from geopolitics, and I think that's part of what the index looks into as well, and that leads to the question of digital sovereignty and the sovereignty. And in that sense, I think it's not only the national sovereignty. I think Subi mentioned earlier, it's about balancing personal digital rights and personal digital sovereignty against or together with national digital sovereignty. That is important. Recently, our program, Net Mission, actually Asian youths are calling for reclaiming agency over their data, and that is a part of the index. I think that's important, which comes to agreement with Nico about open source and transparency. And I really wanted to echo what Joseph Gordon-Levitt said in the opening about your digital self belonging to you. That, I believe, is digital sovereignty and personal digital sovereignty. And finally, the third thing is about the multilingual internet, which we earlier talked about. I think we need to move away from an English-first mentality into a multilingual by design approach, and how the index would take that into consideration in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the resilience, is something that I think is important. So again, congratulations, and I look forward to participating in the Cyber Peace Index.
Thank you so much. Thank you all speakers, and thank you to the IGF Secretariat for allowing us 2 extra minutes for the session. A lot of voices to be heard. We'll continue the conversation and also the questions also offline. So looking forward to those conversations. Thank you so much for your presence and for your views on the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. Vineet, can you hear us?
Thank you so much.